Hello, geniuses! Today we're going to explore city skylines, and as you can see here, I've created Manhattan. Let's take a look at it here. We got Central Park in the middle, that's quite obvious. The Upper West Side, the Lincoln Center area here. Here's Columbus Circle. It's a pretty big circle. Obviously, my map is not to scale. I have different things set up because in city skylines, you really can't make things to scale. Populations and everything else here. Let's take a look at some of the features I've created here, right? So we got Central Park. So this is North 110th Street going across. I made that a major thoroughfare, right? Then down here, I made 106th Street another thoroughfare because 106th Street is where West End Avenue begins and Broadway starts heading sideways. Broadway is a very meandering street throughout Manhattan. We have Amsterdam, we have Columbus, we have Central Park West. I don't have Manhattan Avenue, which normally runs down here. Maybe I'll add it at some future build. Here's Central Park. I populated with a lot of trees. I put the big lake here. Here's the mirror up here. I put some parks here. I have not built out the east side. We got Roosevelt Island up here. Here's Randall's Island and the Bronx. Now, I have a big issue here. When I first created the seed for this map and laid out things, I didn't make Roosevelt Island and Randall's Island in the right spot, and when I built my shipping lanes, I kind of messed them up. And so you can see right through the Bronx, there's this entire canal that flows through the Bronx. I can't reroute the shipping lanes, so in order for the ships to keep on flowing, I gotta have them go that way. Anyway, going back to the main map, here's 125th Street, and that's pretty much where I've stopped. Up here, there is a section, I'm trying to remember what's it called, Riverbank State Park. And for those of you who are familiar with the city, Riverbank State Park is actually a giant sewer system. It's where a lot of water gets processed. So what I did is I put up here a lot of my incinerary plants. I put a landfill, and I also put my crematoriums, my crematoriums up here, right? And I put 2 cemeteries. There's nothing better than visiting your dead loved ones at a cemetery right next to a crematorium where other people are being burned, and the beautiful smell of garbage to remind you how we're all going to be rotting in the end. It's the best place ever. Here's the West Side Highway coming down, and here's an extension going off at 125th Street. Now, normally Riverside Park runs up here. I kind of have Riverside Park set up here. But it didn't really come out well. I might eventually landscape this entire area here, and also landscape New Jersey on the other side, and try to just make this look a little bit more realistic, or at least close to realistic. If I go really farther north, I have the George Washington Bridge crossing over into Fort Lee. This is Washington Heights. I haven't populated yet, and here we go up here in the northern heights of Manhattan. Once again, the Bronx up here. My power is coming from way up north. I got 2 nuclear power plants up here feeding the city. In New York, there aren't any power plants. There are giant transformer stations that convert the high voltage power that's coming down from upstate into the local currencies, but we don't have that. There is a power place or power converter unit at 110th Street and Amsterdam. So hold a second, let me just reorientate myself. Here we go. And if we go to 110th Street in Amsterdam, you can see I kind of made one. I kind of cheated. What I did here is I used a water purification mod, and I put it in there in place of a power converter, but it works fine. Looking at 110th Street, we have up here, we have the Cathedral of St. John the Divine and its grounds, right? We have some buildings to the north of it and a building to the south of it, and these are all the St. John the Divine grounds. Were it to scale, this would take up the entire section here. I don't know, if I tried to scale things out, would it work or not? The cathedral is much larger than two of these buildings put together, so you never know. Let's take a look at what we have now here. Right now, I can see here that we're going to need a lot of commercial zones being built up. And you'll notice here there's a need for police and such. You can see from the highlights here and a few dead people. But if we take a look at our statistics here, I have enough jails and my crime rate's really low. What I think is happening is that in city skylines, you need to be able to build your utility centers near people. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be putting a bunch of crematoriums and garbage disposal units right in the middle of Manhattan. It just wouldn't aesthetically look well. It's not what I'm trying to achieve here. Hence, I put them to the side. But I do have enough police. Now, I had a crash recently, and I lost a lot of my work. But that's fine as well because you know what? Honestly, I was getting a lot of gridlock and I had to go back and fix things up. I was experimenting. And now over here, here's where I'd say this should be. Let's see now. If this is, oh, it's getting hazy. Oh no! Don't tell me it's getting to be nighttime. I don't want nighttime. Let's change that. Let's make sure it's not going to nighttime. So let's go into options, right? And let's go into gameplay here. And use day-night cycle here. Let's turn that off. Click away and then come back here. There we go. Perfect. I don't want nighttime right now. Now, as I mentioned, over here we have 110th Street. Over here we have 106th Street. This here is 96th Street, right? And at 96th Street, for those of you who are familiar with the layout, there is an off-ramp from the highway. Here's Riverside Park. Then I immediately jump kind of into the Lincoln Center area, so I don't have a lot of blocks here. Here's where I'm going to put the Museum of Natural History, just a few blocks south of 96th Street. It really should be down at 81st Street, but we'll put it here for now. Let me make some space here. So first we're going to de-zone the area here, because I actually installed a mod, or a something from the workshop that shows a much larger museum. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all the housing over here, because unfortunately all you guys are going to lose your homes. Bye-bye! By the way, notice, so here's the AC B line, B and C stop here. I'll talk about my transit in a little bit and how I've set that up. But first, let's build up the Museum of Natural History. Let's get rid of the existing housing. Let's bulldoze this street here. Oh my God, what happened to the people who were living there? They're all gone. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Oh, and what do I have here? I have a high school and 2 grammar schools. Well, they're going to be relocated, obviously, because they can't be there. We're going to move the high school, grammar school over here for now. We'll eventually relocate them. Up by Columbia University, I have a few schools. And let's open up that space there. How come this building's still here? Let's bulldoze that, get rid of it here. And now we have our big space here where we're going to have the Museum of Natural History. Now, I'm getting... Here we go. Make sure it's cleared out. There, it's emptied out. Now let's go into our buildings here, and I think at the very far end here... where is this here? No, custom buildings. Where is it? Here? Here, right? It should be here. How come it's not here? I don't see it. New buildings. Yeah, remember to have... Here we go. This is the building that I wanted to put. This is going to be the Museum of Natural History. Put it right there. It's actually the Natural History Museum. It's probably something in German, but we're going to rename it to the American Museum of Natural History. Of Natural History. When I was little, I used to wonder, natural history. And you know, when you go to school and they talk about history and stuff, history to them is like George Washington had wooden teeth and Thomas Jefferson was the 26th president or something like that. In reality, natural history is the history of nature. I like going there because of the dinosaurs and the cool rocks. I never really learned much history. There's also the Hattan Planetarium, so I'm going to keep this observatory there. And there's a lot of park grounds. For those of you who've been there, it's actually a nice place to go have lunch. So I'll put some parks around it. Some small parks. Put a park there. There's a smaller park here. A lot of parks. Now, one of the things with City Skylines is the parks have a radius. You can see this green shadow of where they affect. So the people around here really have great parklands, but the general city doesn't really benefit much from it, except for those who commute to that spot. I haven't really found out if people commute from major distances to parks or not, or only the locals go to it. Who knows? While we're here, we just built out the Museum of Natural History. Let me show you Columbia University. Columbia University is up here. The universities are kind of tiny also, so I used 2 of them. Here's Columbia, here's Barnard, and I put some high schools up here just to make it more of an educational location. And I put the cross street here. This is where 116th would be. Here's the number 1 train. You can see tons of people spilling out at 110th Street. They're all coming out. They're all going to school or to work or what have you. There they go walking down the lanes, going to wherever they might go. And by the way, you'll notice cars here. In actuality, at Columbia University, there aren't any cars. Now, that street fair used to be open to traffic. If you look at earlier photos, it used to be open to traffic and cars would go up and down. I guess as traffic increased throughout the city, they turned it into a pedestrian walkway. Now, I can block automobile traffic here if I want to, but I'm not going to do that right now. What I do want to go into is show you the bus lanes that I put together. let's take a look at the lines here, right? And let's take a look at one of them here, the M104 bus. So I'm going to close out all the other buses and show you just the M104 line. Let's take a look at that and see where it runs. Since I haven't built out much of northern Manhattan, the M104 kind of stops here at 125th Street, goes down Broadway, and keeps on going down to Times Square. Well, here's Lincoln Center. This is what I consider Times Square. You can see it's kind of kooky, and it goes farther down to 34th Street, Penn Station. So it's not necessarily traveling the entire correct route of the M104. The M104 at 42nd Street turns to 5th Avenue. Actually, it turns to, no, it goes all the way to 1st Avenue, if I remember. And it goes past 125th Street. But since I don't have anything built that farther north, I'm not going to bother with it. Now, when I first built this map, I had a lot of problems with the buses, right? They were going all over the places. I had to create these routes. The routes would show perfectly, yet the buses were making crazy left and right turns. And here's why. Here's what I discovered. As you lay down your lanes, they have turn signals here. They tell you which ways the cars can go when they're in that lane. The default for a lot of these lanes was that the innermost lane would turn. As you can see, this bus is now being forced to turn out of its path. So because of that, a lot of the buses were creating these crazy loops. You can see he's going to come back here and then go to the second lane. So by going in there using the traffic mod, I was able to edit these lanes, and now the buses can go straight through. Another thing I did, right, in some of the other versions of this particular game, is I made distinct bus lanes. So you can see here, I have some no buses can go down. What is that? That's West End. And what I can do here is just to make sure my buses run smoothly is I can say this lane here only supports buses. So I'm not going to allow any other traffic. I tend to let emergency vehicles go through there. Emergency vehicles tend to do whatever they want. So I'll let the emergency vehicles go through there. But what we'll do here is we won't allow trucks. We won't allow cars. We won't allow any utility vehicles go through there. Now this is supposed to be a taxi. I have been playing this game for a few months. Maybe it's a mod. I don't know. Maybe it's because of cars that spawn. I'm not sure, but I've never seen a taxi. So maybe just spawn cars. I also don't know where cars really go when they can't park. They kind of disappear. You kind of get driven and disappear. One thing I think they would nice to add to City Skylines would be parking lots. So you have to create parking lots to figure out where your cars go. Not everybody gets a car, and if you don't have a car, you have to take a bus or the train. You can't just take cab and have cabs appear out of nowhere. Right? It just doesn't make any sense. I've also limited the heights of my building on the west side because I don't want really tall buildings. Alright, so that's a quick overview of the map, and this has been episode 1. In episode 2, we're going to get into a little bit more details about how we're going to fix some of these things here and grow our city. Right now, I got a lot of commercial demand, very little demand for it comes for residential planning. And as you can see, I need a lot more residential. The east side hasn't been built out at all. Northern Manhattan hasn't been built out. And downtown Manhattan is a ghost land. Now, looking at the scale of things here, if I'm considering this 34th Street, right, I got a lot of space to go before I hit down to City Hall. I have all the space here. So this area here is going to be really interesting because it's going to be mainly residential. It's going to be the Greenwich Village area right in Soho. It's going to be mainly residential, and I'm not going to put too many brownstones. I'm going to put townhouses and such. Since the game doesn't have townhouses by default and I haven't installed a texture pack for townhouses, what I'm doing here is I'm using suburban housing, so little homes to represent townhouses. You know, small, not necessarily apartments or brownstones, they're townhouses. We'll get into more of that later on. Until then, bye-bye!